Welcome back, AP. So let's pick up where we left off in class on Friday, right? We were talking about the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre under Catherine de' Medici, right? And I don't know if any of y'all noticed it, but yeah, Medici. So she was definitely a part of the Medici family of Florence. And let me double check and make sure I'm recording because I have this ultimate fear sometimes that I'm just talking to myself and nothing's actually happening. But we talked about how the iconoclasms that were going on in the countryside of France were leading to small wars and battles, or small battles between the Huguenots of France and the Catholics of France, right? Well, Catherine de' Medici marries off her daughter, Margaret of Valois, to Henry of Navarre, right? A Huguenot noble, but forces him to convert to try and bring an end to some of the violence, right? Because it's hindering the French economy and it's not making positive gains for the crown, right? So, after the wedding, though, she orchestrates the assassination and tries to basically euthanize the entire Huguenot population. And like historians predict, anywhere from 10,000 to 70,000 were executed all over France following the wedding of these two individuals. Well, what's going to happen after that? Henry of Navarre is not just going to settle for it, because religious wars are actually going to rage all the way for 15 years, almost collapsing France's economy completely, right? So the religious wars begin to break out between mainly nobles who are disagreeing with the motives of the crown. Huguenot nobles fighting against Catholic nobles of France, right? Henry IV is going to come to power, though, completely convert and issue this thing called the Edict of Nantes, right? The Edict of Nantes gave freedom from persecution to Huguenots and for other Protestants, right? Said you will no longer burn down their schools, you will no longer try to destroy their churches, you will no longer enter into wars with them. And also he used to say a very famous phrase, a chicken in every pot, right? So he actually wanted to try and turn away from these religious wars inside of their country and actually focus on promoting French culture and getting back to the economic powerhouse in Europe that they once were, right? Yes, Henry IV. That is Henry of Navarre, right? So whenever I'm talking about this guy that looks like an absolute skis bag, Chester right here, that is Henry of Navarre. He would be crowned Henry IV of France, right? So the Edict of Nantes gave freedom to the Huguenots and other Protestants. This paved the way, though, for French absolutism, right? Paved the way for French absolutism in the sense that basically this is one of the first times in European history that a king is making a sweeping decree on how people are living their lives inside of a country, right? This type of supreme authority is going to set a standard where the Bourbon family, of which he is a descendant, is going to actually create a system where basically a king can do whatever they want, right? So we'll talk about that later, though, because his son, Louis the 13th, and then there's Louis the 14th, who we all know is like, I am the state, that guy, right, is going to keep going after them, right? So we're getting very close to all that kind of stuff. So now I got to talk about the Netherlands under Charles V and how the Dutch are going to break away, right? So the Netherlands under Charles V was a very, very important construct in European history in general. So he is going to inherit the Netherlands and Belgium when he is going to be crowned Holy Roman Emperor at the tender age of 19, right? So remember, Golden Bull, 7 electors, bribe 4 of them, Habsburgs rule all, right? So the Netherlands function, though, under Charles V as their own borderline autonomous unit, but they had to collect taxes and pay homage back to Charles because they were a member of the Holy Roman Empire / the Spanish Empire. However, what happened to Charles V again? Good job, Annie Hatch, Jenna Brady. I heard y'all over there. Like Jenna Brady with your blue computer. I know that you said the right answer. He's going to abdicate the throne, right? It is said that Charles V was the worst reign by the best ruler, right? He was very, very intelligent, considered one of the philosopher kings that Niccolo Machiavelli would have appreciated. But everything that could have gone wrong under this man's rule went wrong, all right? Everything ranging from, honestly, like the inflation of the Spanish economy because of all their New World contracts. Everyone trying to rebel against him. The Protestant Reformation kicking off underneath his reign, right? So everything could have gone wrong under his reign went wrong, right? So he's going to abdicate the throne, and he's going to separate the Habsburg family into 2 branches, the Austrian branch and the Spanish branch. Underline Austrian branch, Spanish branch. It's very important, or highlight it, whatever. But his son, Philip II, is going to take over the Spanish branch, which includes the Spanish Netherlands, right? So The Protestant work ethic, though, those ideas, and Calvinism, underlying Calvinism, Dutch Calvinists, are going to take hold in the Netherlands. A lot of people believe that this is just yet again an economically viable country trying to do its best to try and revolt against its crown, right? Which is Catholic. Because here's the thing. The Dutch, it's the 1500s, mid-1550s, right? Beginning of the 1560s. The Dutch are making stupid amounts of money right now, right? They invented the stock market. They own the Dutch trading company, the Dutch East India Company. You've seen the symbol for it before. It's a V and then an O and a C on it, right? So I'll draw it on the board for you. Just don't let me forget. Be like, Mr. Terry, please draw the Dutch East India symbol for us, and I'll remember. Just don't let me forget. Write it down. Grace Monroe, write it down for me real quick. But the Protestant work ethic and Calvinism is going to take hold in the Netherlands because of these things. So what Philip's going to do to try and respond to the fact that they're making all this money and they're also converting to Calvinism is they're going to up the taxes on the Dutch. Right? Probably not the best idea whenever you're talking about a very wealthy area. Now, really, really quick, somewhere nearby, put parentheses, the Low Countries, which is what everyone in Europe refers to them as. All right? So, the Low Countries, okay? So, riots are going to ensue. Catholic churches are going to be destroyed. Iconoclasm, yet again, due to the fact of economic ties. These nobles and these influential Dutch do not want to be heavily taxed by their crown simply because they're making a lot of money. They want to be autonomous so they can keep it for themselves, right? So anyway, Philip is going to send 20,000 troops to the Netherlands, and it's going to start this whole thing called the 80 Years' War, right? The 80 Years' War. The reason why it's called the 80 Years' War is because for about 50 years before, or like about 20 years beforehand, and then there was the 30 Years' War, and then some wars after that are going to break out where the Spanish are trying to hold on to the Netherlands desperately, right? So, excuse me. Now, also Philip's going to open this thing called the Council of Blood, which is the name given to a royal tribunal that was actually set up by Philip II to basically torture people to death into confessing they were trying to rebel against the crown because of religion and that they actually still were Catholic and they were so sorry. But that what the Council of Blood was meant to do was trying to find all the people that were leading these rebellions of the Dutch against the Spanish, get them to confess via torture methods so they could then legally execute them, right? Because according to Catholic doctrine, you can't just execute people for no reason. They have to admit to it, right? So treason, bad, and then torture to prove that they did it, even though they might not have. Now, so then there's this thing called the Union of Utrecht, right? Utrecht. Not with an L. That's not supposed to be there, even though it looks like a 1. But it's Utrecht, which is actually where the northern provinces of the Netherlands are going to unite together and declare their independence. And they were supported by the English, right? Which is actually a big reason why the Spanish Armada happened, right? Of course, Philip was upset with the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. Of course, he was upset that he lost yet another country to Protestantism. But also the English Protestants were supporting the Dutch in their trying to revolt against the Spanish. And the reason why they did that was because the English were hoping in the long run they would be able to take their East India Company and combine it with the Dutch East India Company to create a gigantic, mega, ultra East India Company, which never actually came to fruition, right? So anyway, war is going to continue, but Spain is going to allow Holland to become independent and go Calvinist much later, right? Later. Happens later. But that's how the Netherlands would finally break away and become their own country. Stop doing that. All right, there we go. Now we got to talk about one more thing. Oh, wait, really quick. Here's the map of the Union of Utrecht, right? The United Province is up here, and then that was the Spanish Netherlands down there. Flanders. Anyway, now, really, really quick, let's wrap up. Talk about the Great European Witch Hunt. I do not need you to write most of this down. I need you to write maybe like this, maybe the numbers here. We've got 2 slides left and then we're done, okay? So, anyway, but the Great European Witch Hunt. So, here's the funny thing about witches, all right? So, the entire pre-modern European society construct believed in this idea of witchcraft, right? Now, ironically enough, it's what they use to try and explain erratic behavior, right? So the Reformation saw a dramatic uptick in the trials and execution of women viewed as witches, right? A lot of this is going to be propagated by really terrible, stupid stereotypes of like these women actually going out into the woods at night, hooking up with the devil, flying through the air, and stealing people's babies, right? So it was basically a way for the irony that I think about this entire system when you look at all the witch trials and the uptick in them, Protestants were mainly the ones doing this, right? The Protestants were really big in actually the witch trials. Look at the Salem witch trials in America. Those were Puritans doing that. They're a form of, what is it? Protestants, right? So, of course, when Protestant communities take hold and begin to grow, these witch trial numbers are going to escalate, right? So, of course, because who knows? Maybe some of our ladies in AP Euro are flying through the air and stealing babies at night, right? Oh, we should totally have a witch trial. Now, anyway, but after the religious wars, right, about 100,000 to 200,000 are going to be tried for witchcraft, and over 40,000 of them are going to be executed for it. Now, this is something that went very undocumented for a long time, mainly just due to the fact because they were women, right? Because I think it was like something in like the 80% of all of them. Oh, yeah, there it is. 75 to 85% of all the people that were being tried for this were actually women, because they were known as demonic lovers and misogyny, right? So, because it's the idea that the values of women were being considered demonic and, like, damnable, basically. Due to the fact that Protestants, remember, also had a huge public outcry against prostitution and also against women not living the Protestant female model. Remember when we talked about earlier that the priests were allowed to get married in Lutheran churches and Protestant faiths. However, women were now being held to a ridiculously high standard in those communities, right? So when they would fall short, act erratically, a lot of times all it needed was just an accusation of witchcraft. Sometimes, like, men would even accuse their wives of being witches if they actually were, like, so let's say hypothetically we have a situation, right? We've got, who we got? Like Denny Kelly. Denny Kelly, right, is married to a Protestant woman. They're Protestants in the community. And then Denny steps out of his marriage, cheats on his wife, then points at the woman he cheated with because he actually can get in a lot of trouble in like a place like the Genevan Consistory because he's being an adulterer. He points at the girl, though, and says, no, it's not my fault. She cast a spell on me. Witch. And then they would actually have a trial. They would torture the women, which would lead to these things called confessions, right? Notice I have the quotes, confessions, and often an execution, right? What we're going to talk about on Monday is we're going to talk about some of the ways they tried to get some of these confessions. But that's the Reformation right there, right? So the Reformation never really ended, okay? Just to give you a heads up. It did continue forward as the years in European history would progress. However, the major actions of the Reformation we are now kind of finally wrapping up, right? So just so you know, the Reformation is like a rock in a puddle, all right? It's not necessarily the initial action of dropping the rock that's so dramatic, but it is the ripple effect that it is going to send through this entire body of water known as Europe, right? So now don't forget, you have a map quiz on Monday. I'm going to take the 20 original countries that I put on there. I'm going to add about 6 more, all right? So y'all have a great evening. Go Birds. I'll see you guys on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Bye, guys.